Hey everybody, James Tierney with Tierney Education coming at you with the second of hopefully 3 videos on this topic of comparative advantage and combined production possibility frontiers. If I have time to make the third one, which will be graphing it, I will. It'll make it at some point, but you might watch this and it might not be there yet, but we will see. This, as I said, is the second video, so we already did a few things and I pulled some stuff from that other video. It'll be linked up here, so if you're finding this one, I really strongly suggest you watch the first video if you haven't done so already, so you can see the continuation. In that first video, we just had 2 states, Florida and California. They were creating oranges and grapefruits. We were given some data on what their per acre yield is, how many they can make per acre, and then that they had 100 acres they could allocate between those two or specialize either way. Now, if you get a question where it's asking you to find the combined production possibilities frontier, the first thing you need to know is that we need to understand comparative advantage. Comparative advantage. Now remember, comparative advantage, this is a review, lowest opportunity cost, right? So especially usually we say lower, we're comparing 2 people, so the lowest is the lower opportunity cost between the 2, in this case, states, Florida and California, because the lower opportunity cost mainly says you can do it better, right? I'm just better at doing this. And so we should specialize. It's kind of the whole idea of this type of model is that we're finding which state, which country, which firm, which individual, economic agent, if you want to talk about it that way, should be specializing in the production of each good. So we did this in that previous video. Again, I'll post it. I'll have a link show up so that way you can go to it if you still made it this far and you're like, wait a minute, I really should go back. We found that California had the comparative advantage in oranges, and then we found that Florida had the comparative advantage in grapefruits. Again, because they had the lower opportunity cost, so we know that they should specialize in that good. So if we are asked the question that we want to, find the points on the combined production possibilities frontier, we want to make sure that California is putting all their resources towards oranges when they can, and that Florida is putting all their resources towards grapefruit when they can. This specific question is trying to find 4 different points along a production possibility frontier if they are working together. I am going to say this is point A, point B, point C, point D. So we're going to talk about these 4 different combinations. And I'm going to kind of walk you through how we care about doing this and how you'll be able to make sure you get this correct on a future problem set, on an exam, etc. So let's start with A. Let's start with this point A, where what do we know? Okay, so we know 120 GF grapefruits are produced. So then what we need to first say is comparative advantage in grapefruit is, and we know this answer in grapefruits is Florida. That's the first step. Whatever's being produced, you find who has the comparative advantage in that. Then we say, okay, if we know that Florida has the comparative advantage, start making Florida produce grapefruits. And then we'll see where we're at. So we can see that per acre, Florida has 6 grapefruits. So they can produce 6 grapefruits for every 1 acre. So I'm going to do the math out here. 6 grapefruits for every 1 acre, ACRE. We want them to be able to do 120 grapefruits, and let's see how many acres that would take. Well, if that's my unknown, I do some cross multiplication. I would say 6x equals 120, divide by 6, divide by 6. So x, which is the number of acres it would take, would equal 20. So Florida needs 20 acres to make this 120 grapefruits, GF. That's important to know because we have now gotten what we need for that bundle. And we have a lot of resources left over, right? That tells us right away this leaves Florida with 80 extra acres. We're going to assume that we're using all those acres. So what are they going to do with them? They're going to end up producing the oranges, right? Because we need to have everything else going to oranges now because we've already gotten what we need, which is the 120 grapefruits. All right, so they've got 80 acres, and for every acre, they can produce 4 oranges. So 4 oranges equals 320 oranges. So what we know for this point over here, right, for this combination over here, again, this is together, what we know, let's go with the blue color. We know that for point A, Florida is going to do 120 grapefruits, and they are going to do the 320 oranges. But that's not together. We now need to figure out what is California going to do. But wait a minute, grapefruits are already gone. So now we know that California just needs to spend everything on oranges because grapefruits are already taken care of. Everything. So that means that California is not going to produce any grapefruits. They're going to put all of their resources towards oranges. That's 100 acres. California oranges is 20. So that's just going to be 20 times 100, which is going to get 2,000 oranges. 2,000 oranges. So now together, what do? All we do if we're doing this together is we're just adding them up. So we'll have 120 grapefruits, which we already know. And we've got 2,320 oranges. So that's how we know that this number, 2,320 oranges. Now, this is a good time to pause the video and see if you can do B because it's pretty much the same thing, only we're going to start with California. So you could pause that right now if you wanted to and then come back and see if you get the right answer because I'm going to erase this part and do part B. Then I'm also going to do C and D. So this will be a little longer of a video, but I think this will be very helpful to walk you through it. All right, let's look at part B. Well, we need 360 oranges. We know for oranges, California has the comparative advantage. So start with California. We can do our ratios again. So California, right up here, California, we're looking at oranges, can do 20 oranges for every 1 acre. We need them to do 360 oranges. And how many acres is that going to, how many acres are they going to need? Well, that's 20x equals 360 when I do my cross multiplication. Divide both sides by 20. I know that x is going to equal 18, which means that's how many acres they are going to be using. So California uses 18 acres to get these 360 oranges, and thus has 82 left over for grapefruits. And one student asked me how to get this 82. Well, there's 100. They're using 18. That's 100 minus 18 gets me to 82. All right, just like we did last time. Okay, ... So California makes or produces 82 acres times 15 grapefruits because they could do 15 grapefruits for every 1 acre. So that means 82 acres, they're going to do 82 times 15, which I plug that into my calculator and I get 1,230 grapefruits. What does that mean if we're doing it again together? Well, California is going to make all of the necessary 360 oranges, and they're going to make 1,230 grapefruits. Now, Florida, they're not going to make any oranges. They don't need to. They're not as good, right? They're not specializing. Like, look over here at the right. Remember, they don't do it as well because Florida's doing grapefruits. California's taking on all of the oranges. And then they have some resources left over, so then they're also going to do the grapefruits. Now that all those oranges are taken care of, Florida is only going to do grapefruits, which they do have the comparative advantage in as well. So they are going to spend all 100 acres doing, let's see, what do we got? We got Florida and grapefruits. 6 times 6 is going to equal 600. So we know we've got 600 grapefruits. As we did last time, we add that up, 360 oranges, which we've already got. So we also add up the grapefruits. We get 1,830 grapefruits. We can add that 1,830 right here. If you had paused and did this, see if you got the same answer as me. Check your answers, and then we'll move on to C. Again, you could pause here and try C and D. They are a little trickier, but I'd really like for you to pause it, try it yourself so that way you can learn it. And then I'm going to erase this, and we're going to do those two as well. All right, we are back with Bundle C, where we are given 750 grapefruits. So we start with whoever has the comparative advantage in grapefruits, which we know, looking over here, comparative advantage in grapefruits is Florida. So we're going to want Florida to produce as many grapefruits as possible. Well, now 750 is actually a lot of grapefruits. And if I look over here per acre, if they have 100 acres, what is the maximum amount of grapefruits Florida can produce? It's actually 600. So Florida produced grapefruits, they can only do 600 max. And again, that's going to be 100 acres times 6 per acre. That's how we're going to get to that 600. So what I know is in this combined, right, I keep underlining this together, right, combined PPF and working together, I know Florida is going to do 0 oranges because they're putting all of their resources and they're specializing in those 600 grapefruits. So that leaves us with California. So the other one, California, needs to make up the rest of grapefruits. All right, I can do that, right? We can do that 100%. Let's just go to a different color, red, to split this up a little bit. So I know that California, for grapefruits, can do 15 per 1 acre, right? 15 grapefruits per 1 acre. We need to figure out how many acres they're going to need to make the rest of them. Well, 750 grapefruits are needed. We know Florida's going to take care of 600 of them. This must then be 750 minus 600, which we know is going to be 150. So 15 grapefruits for every 1 acre for California, right? Again, this is all for California. They're going to be 150 over X. And again, you might be able to do this in your head, but we're doing this for every student to be able to follow along. Cross multiplication gets me 15x equals 150. I divide by 15, I divide by 15. That's going to tell me x, which is the number of acres they need, is going to equal 10. So I know that California is going to allocate 10 acres to grapefruits in order to make up that difference. And then what does that mean? So they have 90 for oranges. That's the important thing. They have 90 for oranges. So, California makes 90 acres times, well, what can they do for oranges? They can do 20 times 20. They're going to make 1,800 oranges. We know what Florida's making up here. Let's now also write down what California is making. California is making 1,800 oranges and 150 grapefruits. Just like we did before, we're going to add these up. These two that I just put dots next to, we're going to add them up. Together, we get 1,800 oranges and 750 grapefruits. So we know that's going to be a point on our table, 750 grapefruits. And then on the left side here would be 1,800 oranges. Again, strongly suggest you to pause this and try on your own point D, see if you get the right answer. That's the way learning is really going to happen. All right, we are back with one more. We're back with one more. D, point D, right? It's given that we need 2,100 oranges. We know that for oranges, we need California has the comp advantage. So they have the comparative advantage. So start there. Hopefully this is starting to make sense after a few different examples. Well, what do we know? California maximum oranges is going to equal 100 times 20, right? We have this 20 up here, 100 times 20, which is going to equal 2,000. Oh, wait a minute. We need to have 2,100. So we're going to put all of those resources that California has towards the oranges, which would be 2,000 oranges, right? That's how we're getting that. So we've got 2,000 OR for oranges and no grapefruits. Okay, but so that means that Florida needs to make the rest. They need to make the rest. Okay, we can do that. We need 2,100. California is already doing 2,000. What's left over? 100 must be made by Florida. We'll do our same kind of equations we've been doing. And again, you might be able to see this naturally, but let's do it, right? So we have to make sure we're looking at oranges and Florida. So that's this 4 number right here. So 4 oranges per every 1 acre. 100 oranges. How many acres is that going to take? 4 to 1 is the same as 100 to what? Cross multiplication, 4x is going to equal 100. Divide by 4, x equals 25. Meaning that Florida is going to use 25 for oranges, meaning they have 100 minus 25, which is equal to 75 for grapefruits. Florida then uses the rest, which we just said was 75 for grapefruits. 75 times, again, grapefruits for Florida, we look back up here, was 6 times 6 is equal to 450. That's how many grapefruits will be used by Florida. So what does Florida do? Because again, it's combined together. Boy, I've said that a lot, but it's important. I've seen students mess up with that. Florida is going to make the rest of the 100 oranges. And then everything else, they're going to do that 450 grapefruits. I add them up. I'm going to get 2,100 oranges, which we already see up here is 2,100 oranges. And then we are going to have 450 grapefruits. So 450 grapefruits. So go back through this video. It's over 20 minutes, right? So it's a lot, but this is a very key part of this type of question. If you can do this, you're going to do really well if you're asked any type of question like this. Again, this is James Tierney from Tierney Education. Feel free to ask any questions in the comments, like and subscribe, all the cool things. And this type of question, once you do it a few times, it will not take you 20 minutes to do, I promise. You'll go a lot faster, but when you truly understand it is when things will really start to click. See you at the next video.